I've got my paper taped down there, and I've got my watercolor paints ready to go, and I've got our reference photo. I will be referring back to this throughout the live, so you will see it again, but I will try to keep it in the frame as well while we're painting, if I can. Just to go over my materials really quick, because we always get questions. My paper is Strathmore watercolor paper. You can see the front there. This is very inexpensive paper. You can find it at any arts or craft store. And it's a great starter paper for if you're a beginner and you'd like some watercolor paper. It's decent quality, but not too expensive. My paints are Winsor&Newton professional watercolor paints. You can use whatever you have, whatever you like. That is totally fine. Those are just the ones that I'm comfortable with and the ones that I use. My brushes are Princeton Neptune brushes for these two. This is a 1/2-inch oval, and then this is a 4 round here. And then I've also got a little detail brush from Christy Rice's art supplies. If you follow her on TikTok, she's a watercolor artist as well. And she sent me some brushes, which I really love, and I wanted a little detail brush for today. And then I taped down my paper with Blick masking tape. It's like $3. You can also use masking tape from the hardware store. Water, paper towels, all that other usual stuff, and we will go ahead and get started. So the first thing that we need to do is put a little drop of water into each of our watercolor pans, especially if you're using dry watercolors, because when they're dry you can't really get any pigment out of them. So just take your brush and put a little drop of water in each color. We may not use every color, we probably won't, but good to have them ready just in case. If you have a spray bottle, that will work as well. I just have always done this, so this is what I continue doing. And as we do this here, I just want to do my little spiel, which is that this is just a for fun painting. We are here to practice, we are here to learn, and we are here to have a fun, nice, relaxing afternoon. So if this is your first time doing watercolor, or you're fairly new to watercolor, or even if you're more experienced, this is just for fun. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to do like a perfect painting right now. Just try to enjoy the process and be gentle with yourself, and have fun and be respectful in the comments, all that kind of stuff. And feel free to ask questions as well. I love Kirsty Rice. Yeah, I love her too. She's great. Okay, so we're going to have a little chat about our reference photo here while the paints are dissolving. If you'd like to take a screenshot of this so you can have it later, feel free. But this, we're going to kind of do this in layers. So we're going to do a sort of background layer with the fog, the orange of the ground here, and then the pathway. And then we will layer on some more vibrant colors, as well as these foggy trees in the background, and that's going to be the most fun part. So to start out with, we're going to do kind of a background layer and then work from that. So we need to mix some colors. We need to mix a very light gray and kind of rusty orange, and then a darker gray. So I'm going to move this here and this here so that you can see my mixing adventures here, and I will get some swatch card out. So for a very light gray, you want to use gray or black, whatever you want, and just add a little bit of color to a section, and then just add a butt ton of water, just so much water, because we want this to be like basically clear. It's going to be just like slightly tinted gray, but essentially we want it to be clear. So just a little bit of paint and then a ton of water. Just go back and forth with your water cup and keep adding paint or keep adding water until it's probably about that consistency, where it's basically just water and there's a little bit of a gray tint in there. Okay. Then we're going to do a slightly darker gray, so same color, either the black or the gray that you were using before, and add that to another pan and add some water, but not quite as much. So we have a darker gray, and that's going to be for the path. You can add a little bit of brown to that gray as well if you want to neutralize it a little bit, make it a little bit warmer. So there's that color. And then for our last one, we want a kind of rusty orange color. So I'm going to use burnt sienna, which is kind of a rust color, I would say. And then I'll add a little bit of yellow ochre to that. Yeah, a little bit of yellow ochre. So burnt sienna and yellow ochre. And that'll give us this kind of earthy, reddish, orangish brown. And add a little bit of water to that as well. We don't want it to be too concentrated yet. Yes, that is Payne's Gray, and this is watercolor. Good questions. So there's that color. I'm going to add a little bit more color to this so that it's not quite so watered down. That's why we like to swatch our colors, because it's hard to see when they're in the pans how diluted they are. How about that? Yeah, that's better. So something like that. These three colors. They don't have to match mine exactly, and they don't have to be perfect. It is just, this is the first layer. Don't worry too much about it. Okay, so as we're doing this first layer here, we're going to do a sort of wet on wet technique, more or less. If you feel comfortable and you'd like to, you can sketch out this path here. So I'm going to do this line that kind of goes right here onto my paper. I'll move this up a little bit so you can see. So a little bit under halfway. There's that one, and then it kind of curves around this way. And you want to draw lightly. Don't press down too hard with your pencil. You can lightly erase your lines afterwards so that they don't show up in the final painting. That way you can see them now. I'll leave mine a little bit darker than I should, just so you guys can see them on camera, hopefully. Okay. So now what we're going to do is fill in, if you can see in the reference photo, the sort of the line of the land where you can kind of see it disappearing into the fog. It's right here, and it's kind of a diagonal on the way down. And so that's what we're going to kind of try to do. We're going to try to imitate here. So what we're going to do is fill up this top half with that really light gray, and then we'll start from the bottom with our other two colors and work them up and blend them with that light gray. That's the idea. So you can feel free to watch me for this step because we have to do it all at once so that the paint doesn't dry. So if you want to watch me, I will give you some time afterwards to catch up, okay? So grab that super light gray that we had and just loosely fill in the top little over half of the page. There's no technical rhyme or reason to this. The only thing you want to try and have is just that sort of downward slope about halfway down the page. Otherwise, you're just going to fill it in. Okay. And then let's start with our orange here. And what we're going to do is start at the bottom, fill in the section up until the little path there. Start kind of filling in backwards. And then once you've filled in about half of this section here, you're going to clean off your brush and just use a clean wet brush to blend the rest of the paint up into that, that light gray at the top there. So something like that. Okay. You can repeat that same process on the other side. So starting with that concentrated color that we mixed down at the bottom, I like to just use horizontal strokes. Fill in about half, a little more than half of the section. Clean off your brush and use the damp clean brush to just blend the rest of it up to the gray. You can again use some horizontal strokes to kind of even that out a little bit, but don't worry about it too much. And then exact same technique, but with the gray in the path. Don't worry about these colors mixing. That is okay. Fill in the bottom here. And then again, once you get to about halfway, clean off your brush and use your clean damp brush to blend the rest up to the light gray. Okay. Doesn't look like anything right now, but this is kind of the base that we're going to work off of. So go ahead and do that if you haven't already. Leave it alone. Don't try to like overly blend it or anything. We're going to add like a lot of detail on top of this. So it is okay to have it just kind of be a little splotchy. These colors are running in together. That is fine. Just let it do its thing. Okay. Go ahead and catch up with that. If you have any spots where you have a ton of like water puddling on your page. Once you're done, you can use a completely damp brush, or completely dry brush, I should say, and just touch those areas, and you'll be able to pick up that excess water and paint. Just do this lightly. That will help it dry faster, so I do recommend that you do that if you have some spots that have a ton of paint and or water. Otherwise, we're just going to let it dry. We're going to give it a few minutes, just a couple, one or two, to dry, and then we will move on. So if you have any questions, art-related questions, feel free to put them in the comments. Here is the reference photo again if you'd like to see. So if you in your mind, if you take away all the trees and these really vibrant leaves here, we've painted kind of the background of this. And then we're going to layer on top those trees and the vibrant leaves in the foreground here. And it'll give us this misty effect, hopefully, if everything goes well. That's the idea. I'm heading to a Paint Your Pet event in a little bit. Oh, that's so fun. That's very cool. Giving folklore, absolutely. I feel like it's more Evermore, but fair enough. How do you know the right amount of water? That's a good question. And I unfortunately don't have a great answer for you. It's kind of a feel thing. It's kind of something that you get used to as you paint more, and you work with the paints that you have and figure out how much water they need to do various things. So I don't really have, because there's not really a measurement. So I don't really have an answer for you, unfortunately. But yeah, so as you practice, you'll figure that out a little bit better. I think I have the same palette, Paul Rubin. Nope, this is Winsor&Newton. Pretty much every watercolor palette uses this same tin, though, so I understand where you're coming from there. Any other questions before we move on? Well, we have a lot of people. I will do my plugs just while we're waiting here, since I have a captive audience. I am a full-time artist. This is my job, part of this. And I do have an Etsy store that is linked to my bio. I also, very excitingly, have a watercolor book coming out next April, but pre-order is available now. So if you want a instructional book that is very similar to these paint and sips, it's basically just the book form of these paint and sips, please click the link in my bio, and the very top link there is how to pre-order the watercolor book for wherever you are in the world. So if you're interested in that, it would mean the world to me if you check it out. And if you do pre-order, you get some bonus materials. So you get some bonus tutorials with that pre-order. So just a little incentive for you to pre-order that if you feel like it. And yeah, all the rest of my stuff is linked to my bio as well. My Patreon, my art supply recommendations, my Amazon storefront. If you want to leave me a tip or a gift for today's lesson, you can do that there too. So overall, just check out the link in my bio and pre-order my book, please. Oh, thanks, Mom. Thanks for pre-ordering. Thank you very much. It's really because of all of you that I could even make a book, really, because that's how people found me, and that's how this company that I'm working with, Page Street, found me and wanted to work with me to make a book. So I appreciate all of you for supporting me, as always. Okay, I think we have a relatively dry piece of paper here. So as it dries fully, we're going to start by, let's see, I think we're going to paint our first layer of very faint trees first. So to your paints, I'm just going to use the same gray that we used for the road here and just add a little bit more water to this one. This one is too watered down, and I don't feel like adding a ton of paint to make it the correct color. So I'm just going to water down the same gray that we used for the road until we get to, that's still a little bit too much. A little bit too much. Keep watering it down until we get to about here, probably. Yeah, that's good. So something like that, pretty watered down, but way more pigmented than like this really light gray that we used for the background, okay? And then you're gonna take a smallish brush and add in some trees. And these trees are gonna start kind of in the area where the orange meets the light gray. So somewhere in there, and I'm gonna show you kind of how to blend out the bottoms of them too. So I'm just gonna start kind of maybe right here And just kind of add a wiggly-ish straight line there. There's a tree. We've done it. And then once you've painted a couple, you can blend out the bottom. So you're going to use a clean, damp brush and just touch the very bottom of the tree just to kind of blend it out with the background there so we don't have that harsh line. Okay, so you can add a few at a time. I like to kind of cluster them together, make a few that are skinnier, make a few that are wider. Got lots of options. You can add a few branches as well if you want. And again, just kind of touch the bottom of the tree with a clean, damp brush to blend out the bottom. I'm going to do a couple over here. Don't feel like you shouldn't make them kind of straight up and down really perfect. You want to let your hand wiggle a little bit, make them bend to one side or the other. It increases the creepy factor, I suppose, of the painting, and it also just helps them look a little bit more natural. So don't feel like you want to make like straight up and down columns. You want to vary them a little bit, make them look a little bit more natural. So add some that are thicker, like this one. And just keep adding trees to your heart's content. This is only like the first of 3 layers of trees, so don't feel like it needs to look perfect right now. It'll look very different later. So this is just adding texture to the background. So you have some time to practice these before it really matters. Okay, and we're just gonna work our way across. I'm gonna leave kind of an open space where the path goes because there wouldn't really be too many trees there. So I'm gonna continue them on the other side. Thank you for the likes, everyone, too. We're at 11,000. That's really awesome. Okay, continuing to add trees over here. Don't overthink these. If you want some even more natural trees, don't touch your hand to anything, just let it float. And that'll give you some wiggly trees for sure. I was going to say your trees look fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. There we go. Okay. Sometimes we gotta, yeah, I took care of it. Don't worry. Thank you. She has been blocked. Okay, we can continue working here. Just gonna kind of fill in an even layer of trees throughout this painting here. And you can see as they dry, they get a little bit lighter as well. That's the kind of the thing with watercolor. Another option for you, if you want, is while they're still wet, you can use a completely dry brush to pick up some of that pigment, and this will make them look extra spooky. And you can really fade them out like that. So you could fade out the tops if you wanted to, or like part of the trunk. You could just really make them look like almost not there, which is fun. Something like that. Okay. I think that's good. I'm going to leave that there, and then we were going to add some more later, so don't worry. Make it look easy. Thank you. I've had a lot of practice. Okay, let's add a little bit more color to the ground here. So we're going to use a similar color that we used for the first layer. And if you can see here, we've got this sort of section, like right here, and then it goes this way. This section that's much darker and more saturated than the one behind it. And that indicates, excuse me, kind of a ledge here, and then it kind of slopes down this hill. So we're going to paint in this section here and kind of blend it out with the background. So use the same color that we were using for the foreground, for the first layer, I should say. And then let's mix a little bit of an earthy green as well. So I'm going to do green and brown mixed together. And maybe, yeah, I think that's good. Maybe a little yellow ochre. So green, brown, and a little bit of yellow ochre. Make this nice earthy green, water it down. And let's maybe add a little bit more paint to that orange color. So again, burnt sienna and yellow ochre. Let's just add a little bit more paint so that it's a little bit more saturated before we start. Okay, so we're going to do a similar technique that we did at first, where we start at the bottom and work our way up. That is so that we can blend it out and keep that misty effect. So I'm going to start kind of right here, create kind of a jagged-ish edge that'll show those leaves kind of sitting on the side of the road there. And it's going to go out to about there. And just kind of create this shape here. Hopefully you can see that. Let me move that up a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to fill that in. And then again, with a clean, wet brush, I'm going to continue this shape up to that area where it might disappear. Up here. And we'll just blend it out with that clean, damp brush. And then over here, while this is still wet, let's drop in a little bit of green. Add a few little green areas here. And then let's just gently, I'm kind of figuring this out along with you guys too. Let's just gently blend this out for now. So I'm just using a damp brush and running it along this edge here, just to blend it out a little bit. And I think we're going to leave it there for now, and we'll probably go back and add to that a little bit later. I'm changing my mind. Actually, okay, I've changed my mind a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. We're just going to make this section a little bit bigger and blend it out again. So just add to it a little bit more. You can add some green like before. And then again, clean, damp brush, blend out the edge there. It's okay if there's a little bit of texture. In fact, you can add just a little bit of texture if you want to. But just blending all of that out with a clean, damp brush. Okay. Again, we're not done with this, so it's going to look weird right now, and that's okay. We're going to do a very similar thing over here, where we add this orange color down here. Create a bit of a jagged edge there. Up here, there's kind of a hill that goes down this way. So we're just going to kind of add color up until about there. Something like this. So about 2/3 of the original orange area. Again, drop in some green. And then use a clean, damp brush to blend out that edge up there. You could do this a couple times just to get a nice, even blend there. There we go. Okay, we're gonna let that dry. Again, it's okay if it doesn't look like mine. It's okay. I understand those directions might have been a little confusing, so I apologize. This is what happens sometimes when I just go straight from a reference photo. You gotta change it up a little bit sometimes. So go ahead and follow along with that. Yep, it is watercolor paper. And yeah, I think that looks pretty good for now. We've got a few more. We're going to keep adding layers to this, just continue working on it until it looks the way we want it to. This is the ugly stage right now. And we will get to a stage where it is less ugly pretty soon here, hopefully. Let me know how you're doing, and let me know if you are ready to move on or if you need a few minutes. I can't see you, so just let me know where you're at. Type of watercolors to use, those are Princeton Neptune, or sorry, Winsor&Newton watercolors. I feel like I just can't water paint. That is just something that is you learn with practice, I promise. When you practice a bunch, you will get better, you get more comfortable. It just gets way easier, just like anything else. You use clear water in the back to show distancing. Yeah, it was like a really light gray that we used in the background, and you'll be able to see that when we take off the tape at the end of this. What is the difference between cold press and hot press watercolor paper? That's a good question. Cold press is usually a little bit more textured, and then hot press is usually much smoother. I think cold press you can get a little bit more. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say things that I don't know for sure, but I know that's the main difference is that cold press has more of a texture, like a tooth to the paper, and then hot press is more smooth. And that's one of the main differences. And then people just like one or the other based on what they like to use. I always use cold press. Okay, so let's move on and add another layer of trees here. And what we want to do for that is add a little bit more gray to the original color that we were using for those trees, and add a bit of brown, because now we want to start making these trees look a little bit more on the brown side. So still add some water. We want it to be a little bit of a darker color than before, but not too much. We don't want to go too dark yet. So add some brown, add some water. That was too much. So we'll add a little bit of pigment back into here. So now we should have more of like a neutral gray. So before the Payne's gray is a cool gray, and we should have more of a neutral gray now. Okay, I think that's a good balance there. So now the difference between these trees that we're about to paint and the ones before are these ones are going to start a little bit further down. And if you weren't paying too much attention to that before, don't worry about it. But these ones are just going to start a little bit closer to us. We also want them to generally be a little bit thicker than the trees that we painted before. But there's always room for variation in that. So there can be some skinny trees in this layer too. So we're just going to paint right on top of what we had done before. And with this layer, I want us to start adding a few little branches here. So I'm just going to use a super light touch with my brush. I can zoom you in here a little bit. So super light touch with my brush and adding some branches, some skinny little branches coming out from these trees. You can also add some leaves if you want. So for those, you would just kind of tap, 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 and create kind of a cluster of leaves like that in a few little areas. Just tap, tap, tap. And then you can, if that's too dark for you, if you want it to be a little bit more subtle, you can use a dry brush and pick up some of that pigment or blend it out a little bit. And that will make it a little bit more subtle. Something like that. Okay. So add some trees, add some branches to those trees. Don't forget to just very, very lightly blend out the bottoms of these trees. Not as much as we did before, but just a little bit. They are professional. These are Winsor&Newton professional paints. We're getting some rain here. I tell you, this is a good rainy day painting. This is a perfect vibe. Now add some leaves here, so just tap, tap, tap. My brush randomly, adding some little clumps of leaves. We don't want too many leaves because this is fall and most of the leaves are on the ground, but it's fun to add a few. I'm too late. That's okay. You can follow along on YouTube later. This will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. So you can always follow along later. Add a skinnier tree over here. You can't see that anymore. There we go. Very light touch, adding branches. I've always wanted to learn how to paint. Well, let me teach you. Leaves. Tap, tap, tap. Okay. I think that's good for that side. We do want to add fewer trees in this layer than we did before, just because they are closer, and so there's less room for them. I think I'll move on to the next side here. I put the paints on my wish list. Excellent. My trees never look so natural when I paint. That is partially just because I have had practice. I think it might be partially too because you are the one painting them. So you know that you've painted them and that they are not real. I think if someone else were to look at your painting, I don't know if they would say the same. It's kind of an illusion that you get as an artist, unfortunately. But it's also just practice. So there are several things that it could be, but give yourself credit. It's probably just because you're the one who painted them. There we go. Add some leaves, tap, tap, tap. How do you start your paintings? Do you have a vision in your head, or do you copy something? I almost always copy a reference, or use a reference photo. I shouldn't say copy because that's not what I do. I almost always use a reference photo. It is hard to paint realistic things without a reference photo. Most artists do it, even like really experienced artists way more experienced than me. Most of them use reference photos if they're painting something realistic, because it's just so, like, pretty much impossible to paint realism from your head, because your brain just does not remember things like that. So I almost always use a reference photo. You don't have to copy the reference photo exactly. I often take liberties with the reference photo. Like for right now, I'm not copying these trees from the reference photo. I'm just kind of painting these trees where I want them to go. But I'm using the reference photo as inspiration and as a guide for how they should look, the color, the tone that they should have, kind of the overall composition of the painting, all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an interesting answer to your question, but I do use a reference photo almost all the time because it's just very difficult to not if you want to paint something realistic. And again, we're going to add some clumps of leaves over here. And it's also not cheating. I don't know if anybody has been told that before by like an art teacher or something like that, but using reference photo is not cheating. Even like tracing a reference photo that you're going to paint later is not cheating. It is a tool and a way to create a painting that artists have used for centuries. So don't ever feel like using a reference photo or tracing or anything like that is cheating. The only thing that would be cheating is like directly copying somebody else's art and then selling it. But if you've taken the reference photo, then nobody can get you in trouble for that. So exactly. Gives you ideas. Okay, I think that's good for that second layer of trees there. We can see it starting to come together, which is good. I think we're going to switch back to the foreground here, and we're going to do a little check-in with the reference photo here too, this layer of trees. So I think this time we're going to actually define this little ledge here that we have. I wanted to define that. I wanted to add a little bit more color to that background there, but now we're going to define that ledge. And then we're going to add this little hill that's over here with some dark brown, and define this kind of hill here too. Yeah, I think that's good. And then for the last part, we'll add our last couple of trees here that are in the foreground. We've painted kind of all of these. We can always go back and add more later, so don't worry if you don't have all your trees in yet. We can add more later. Yeah, I think that's good. Take a little sip of whatever you're sipping on too. Thought it was a river instead of the road. That's okay. I did not take this picture. This comes from a website called Unsplash, where people can upload photos for others to use royalty-free. I try to use that for when I get reference photos. When I need a photo of something that I don't have a photo of myself, I use Unsplash because it's usually royalty-free, and people who upload their photos there don't expect to get paid for them. So that's what I like to use. Okay. And now we're going to continue with our color here. Let's add a little bit more paint to this mixture. So again, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, even more concentrated. You can even add a little bit of brown to it now, just to tone it down just a little. You can add a little red to it as well. Oh, that was too much red. Well, that's what it's going to be. Okay. So similar to what we've been doing already. Let's see, get you in a spot where you can see this a little bit better. So similar to what we've been doing already, starting at the bottom-ish, we're going to add that jagged line. You can add a few dots on the road if you want to, for some leaves that are on the road. And Start adding this color all the way over to about here, so a little bit up the side of the paper. And then this section is going to get smaller as we move towards the distance here. Feel free to add some green as well. You can even add some green like straight from the palette if you want. Just some little dots. That kind of adds a cool effect. You could do the same thing with orange or yellow ochre. Just take some yellow ochre paint straight from your palette. Don't mix it or anything. And just kind of drop it in here. It's a little bit harder to see, but you can see it there. Anyway, that's just an option for you. And then with a clean-ish damp brush, just going to blend that out to the distance there and blend it out slightly on the top here. Throw splashes towards the top. That's okay. It's abstract. Okay, so with my clean damp brush here, I'm blending, but I'm also kind of adding texture here because I don't want it to be like such a harsh line. So I'm kind of scrubbing back and forth, adding texture, blending that out with the background. Okay. And one more option for you is to use a completely dry brush while this is still wet and pick up some areas to add these little highlights here while the paint is still wet. And this will just give us a little bit of texture in the foreground here. Okay. Something like that. Once we add the final trees, this will kind of make more sense as well. Okay. I think there's a debate going on about what's easier. Watercolor's cheaper and requires less extra stuff. I feel like most paint requires about the same amount of stuff. I would say oil paint probably requires the most amount of stuff. Actually, before we paint this side, let's mix up a little bit of dark brown. So pretty much just whatever brown is in your palette, maybe a little bit of blue to it just to dull it down. And not too much extra water. And with this dark brown, we're going to add this little hill that we see right here. So let's see if I can put this. I'll just kind of hold it here so that you guys can see. I'm just going to add in this sort of texture here. Okay, something like that. And then before it dries completely, just switch back over to my orange and fill in the spaces between. So there should be a few sort of defined areas in there, defined lines, but also a few areas where they kind of mix together. Something like that. And then we're going to do the same thing that we did on the other side, where we just add in a little bit and then use our clean damp brush to blend it out. And this hopefully will give us the idea that this is a hill. Or at least some rocks or some texture or something there. It's okay if it doesn't exactly come across as a hill, as long as it looks like it's meant to be there. There we go. I think that's pretty good. You can always go back in with the brown if you've lost your brown, just to define that even more. Up to you. This is kind of a wet on wet technique. Yes, this video will be uploaded to my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is linked in my bio, along with a bunch of other stuff of mine, if you want to check that out too. Sure, yeah, that looks close enough. Okay, how's everybody doing with this? I can't paint quick enough for large wet on wet sections. That's okay. That's something that comes with practice as well, and kind of an abandonment of perfectionism, if you can, because watercolor itself just will beat the perfectionism out of you. That's just how that works. More time, please. All right, go ahead. I'm new to watercolor and learning a lot of technique today. Excellent. I'm glad you're learning technique. Sometimes I do try to mix these Hannah's Choice lessons in every once in a while, but sometimes I feel like the directions can be a little confusing because I'm figuring it out at the same time. So I hope you're learning. Watercolor is very suggestive to focus on the details. Yeah, exactly. Painters come with just a hint, just a soupçon of OCD. Yeah, there's one way to get rid of that. It's by painting with watercolor, I tell you what. Hope you're having fun at least. Okay, so while you're working on these last couple of steps, we've got a couple things left to do, but I'm going to give you a minute or two, and I'm going to repeat my plugs just because that's part of why I do these lives. So, and if you're watching later on YouTube right now, all of these links that I'm talking about are in the description of this video. Anyway, in my link tree in my bio, I have my watercolor book pre-order. So if you like these paint and sip sessions and you want to have them in a book form and slightly more like more professional, please do pre-order my book. It would mean a lot to me. And it is coming out next April, but you can pre-order it now. And if you pre-order, you will get some bonus material, some extra tutorials. So if you want to do that, the first link in my bio is how to order my book, how to pre-order my book. So please check that out. I also have my Etsy shop. I've got a lot of new stuff, actually. I've got some matted prints just in time for the holidays. If you want to get a matted print for somebody else or for yourself, it saves you that extra step of matting it, and then it's ready for a frame. So I've got some of those available, limited numbers, so make sure you check out my Etsy shop. I've also got the regular things like bookmarks, postcards, paintings, all that extra stuff in my Etsy shop as well. It would mean a whole lot to me if you check out the art that I sell. That is how I pay my rent, so I would appreciate it if you would like to support me that way. I also have my Patreon in my bio. I do tutorials on my Patreon, so if you like these tutorials and you like them in video form, I upload one a month onto my Patreon. That's just for Patreon members, and it is only $3.50 to join my Patreon at that level. And then if you want some extra bonus art throughout the month, you can do that. There's other tiers available in my Patreon, so you can do that too. I've got my art supply recommendations in my bio as well, my Amazon storefront. Always really appreciate it when you guys check that out too. And then if you'd like to leave me a tip or a gift for today's lesson, we're not quite done yet, but if you'd like to leave me a tip or a gift, you can do that in the link in my bio. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a little tab called Tip Jar, and that makes it really easy. Or if you'd like to use PayPal, that's in there too at the bottom. So again, I really do appreciate tips or you checking out my Etsy shop. That is always very, very appreciated. And again, if you're watching on YouTube later, all of those links are in the description of this video. Okay, so the last couple of things that we're going to do, just like 2 more things really. We're going to paint our last couple of trees, which are going to be in the very foreground here, our darkest trees yet. And then we're also going to darken up this road a little bit just to make it a little bit more defined. So let's paint those. Let's see, what's dry? Let's paint the trees first. So to that same area where we were mixing our tree colors before, let's add even more brown. Still add some gray, but more brown. Oh, that was a lot of gray. Okay, so definitely more brown to even that out. And let's add a little touch of green to this too, just a little hint of green. And still a little bit of water, not too dark, but definitely darker than the other trees that we've painted so far. Something like that. See you, Aunt Lori. Have fun at work. Love you. Okay. So we've got this nice dark. This will be on YouTube later. Good question. I forgot to mention that in my plug. Session. My YouTube channel is linked to my bio as well, and this and all the other paint and sips are uploaded to YouTube. So you can find my YouTube channel there and check out this one when it's uploaded a little bit later. All right, let's paint in some trees here. These are going to be nice, thick trees that we're going to paint in this time. And we're going to make them pretty close to the road at this point as well. That will show that they are in the foreground here. And then at the bottoms of these trees, if you want to, you can kind of spread them out. Just make them a little bit wider at the base. And then add just a couple like little areas where the roots go into the earth there. So just a couple lines kind of spreading out from the bottom. That'll make it look like they're a little bit more grounded into the earth. Okay, let's make sure to add some branches to these. Feel free to add some leaves as well. If you'd like to be fun and add some yellow leaves or orange leaves from like the same color as what we've done down here, you're welcome to do that as well. Or if you'd like to make this a little bit more creepy, just leave out the leaves on this round. Okay. There we go. That's a good one there. And then I think I'm going to deviate from the reference photo a little bit. I'm going to do one right here. Go. You've been able to make the tree have texture. How do you do that? I believe that's just the texture of the paper kind of showing through. If you see there, it is kind of cool. It looks exactly like tree texture. But I think it's just because of the way the paint is acting with the paper. I often get that texture with this paper and these paints that I use. I think it's just kind of an accident. The branch didn't connect. That's okay. Doesn't have to. Turns out that actually makes it look a little bit more realistic when you have areas where they don't quite connect or something like that, oddly enough. Let's add a few little leaf details up here. Again, just tap, 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 little sections of leaves, but this time we're going to use a little bit of that orange. And I'm going to blend that out with a clean, damp brush because we don't want it to be too bright. Something like that. Okay. Oh, we could add a stump. Let's add a little stump. Too. Love a good stump. There we go. Stump. Yeah, it does. The texture can be a problem if you're painting a scene that you don't want that texture in. So it's not always welcome, but sometimes it is a fun accident. And I think it's just the brown paint for some reason. I think the brown paint is extra granulating on this paper for whatever reason. I can tell you why. Okay, got a tree over here. Again, make sure you're kind of spreading out those feet of the tree so they look like they're kind of in the ground. We can add another little detail a little bit later to make them really look like they're in the ground, but for now, just kind of do your best. Let's do one like that. Add a few branches. We'll do one here as well. We are going to go over time. I apologize. I will be visiting your Etsy site. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I apologize. We'll be going over time a little bit. Again, if you have to go, this will be uploaded to YouTube, so you can always find it later. My YouTube channel is linked to my bio, so you can subscribe, and that way you don't miss any. There we go. I think I might stop there. Maybe I'll add like one more here. Just to really we can have a branch kind of going over the pathway here, which is kind of fun. Sure. Yeah. I made those trees look a little too similar, didn't I? Whoopsie. Let's change that branch there. Sometimes you get in a little pattern and then they end up looking like twins, and you don't want that. So we gotta change them up a little bit. Okay, sure. And then I think I'm gonna add a few more leaves, just in a couple of random spots around here. Just tap, tap, tap. Something like that. Happens for me with full evergreens. Yeah, I get in a little pattern, and it's not good because then the trees look painted instead of real. So gotta be careful on that. There we go. Leaves, put a few over here. Trees are like sisters, not twins. Exactly. Okay, great. We're going to let that be there. Okay, let's paint the road real quick. That'll be kind of one of our last details, and then we're just going to ground those trees in just a little bit. So let's get a nice... Have you ever messed up a painting? How do you fix it? Oh boy, have I messed up a painting. That's a fun question. Oh, I've messed up thousands of paintings in my life. All artists make bad paintings almost all the time. And if you don't think they're bad at the time that you've painted them, they're bad a year later. So that's just something that you kind of have to deal with as an artist. It's also subjective, so sometimes you might think it's good or bad, but other people might have a different opinion. But just generally, sometimes you can fix it. Sometimes you can kind of edit or change. A lot of times with watercolor you can't, so you just gotta kind of, I recommend finishing a painting, but sometimes you just gotta take an L on a painting. Oh, I did forget feet. Thank you. Forgot feet on the last tree. Switch back to that. See if I can add it without looking too weird. There we go. Okay. So I made a very dark gray, just with Payne's gray and a little bit of brown and some water. And with this Payne's gray, we are going to do another layer on the road. Same thing, just kind of horizontal stripes. Create this little texture, help out this texture with the side of the road here. Just kind of wiggle your brush back and forth to make a fun, interesting texture. Do it somewhat quickly, and that'll help too. Helps with the randomness, so you can see this. There we go. Yeah, watercolor's not very forgiving. You really cannot paint over mistakes. So you just gotta either accept it and it becomes part of the painting, or yeah, I mean, really that's your only option. So that just is what it is. Other paintings like gouache or acrylic or oil, you can paint over entire sections, and I sure have, of different paintings. And do them again, and hopefully it turns out better the second time or the third time or the fourth time. But with watercolor, you really can't do that. So this comes with a lot of acceptance. Okay, so once we get to about halfway up the road, we're gonna add some water to our brush and continue with these horizontal stripes. Again, just kind of continuing up the road, and then again, use a clean, damp brush to just kind of blend that out into oblivion up there. Okay, something like that. We can use dark brown to kind of define this edge here as well, if you want. While that gray is still wet, it'll kind of blend, and that's a nice texture in there too. You can add some little sticks and stuff on the roadside here if you want. You might do a little fun texture with this at the end if you guys want to stick around for that too. So just kind of in the very front, I'm adding this brown, dark brown, to the edges of the road. And maybe some just little textures and sticks and stuff on the side. Something like that. Okay, we're getting there. We are nearly done. This is a bit of a long one, but we are nearly there. This will be on YouTube later, my YouTube channel, which is linked in my bio. All right, last detail, let's ground those trees into the earth. So let's take some of that orange that we were just using and add a bit of brown into it. So we're just gonna make a darker orange and use that and just add a little shadow underneath these close-up trees. So I'm just gonna kind of outline loosely the feet of the trees down here. The trees do not have to be fully dry. Don't worry about that. But this just kind of gives them a little bit of shadow down there. And because this is a foggy day, we're not going to get too much of a shadow of like the actual trees, but having this little shadow down here by the roots shows that they are plugged into the ground. You can add this as texture along here too if you want to, or even carefully flick your paper with this same color. I recommend just down here at the bottom, and that'll give you that little spatter. And it'll be a little extra leaf texture. So I'm just kind of carefully doing this. I try to keep it contained to this area. But if a little bit goes up, that's okay. If you get some a little bit too high, just take a paper towel and dab at them somewhat quickly. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. I think we're going to call that good. Let me look at the whole thing first. Let's make sure that we don't have anything else that we want to do. I think that's pretty good. You can blend out those shadows a little bit if you want to. There we go. All right, I'm going to call that good. Now I'm going to take off the tape, which is really the best part of this whole thing. And thank you so much for sticking around with me. I know we went a little bit over, so thank you for being here. Thank you for painting along with me. If you painted with me, always a pleasure, always fun. I hope you enjoyed. Oh, that's peeling. That doesn't happen very often. Well, there we go. Got a little bit of peel there. If your tape is peeling your paper, you can heat it up with a hairdryer briefly before you peel it. That will help. I think that was just because that paper was a little bit wet down there. I think this top part will be okay. I don't usually have a problem with this tape. There we go. Okay, one more time. You're going to get treated to my shameless plugs. My watercolor book is on pre-order, which is very exciting. It is basically these paint and sip sessions in book form. And so if you enjoy these sessions and you want to work with my watercolor paintings, but in book form, please go ahead and pre-order the book. It will be coming out next April, but it is not too early to pre-order the book. So if you click on the link in my bio, the top link in my link tree is how to pre-order my book. So just click on that and then click through. You'll find lots of different tabs for however you want to order it. And that is always appreciated. If you pre-order, you get some bonus material from the book. So make sure you do that. My Etsy shop is also linked to my bio, so please check that out. That has all of my art that I sell, which is always, I always really appreciate it when you guys check that out. I have some matted prints, which are exclusive and not going to last very long. And then I also have the regular bookmarks, postcards, paintings, prints, all that kind of stuff. My Patreon is linked to my bio as well. So if you want to check that out, I do monthly tutorials just like this one, just for my Patreon members. And it's only $3.50 to join to get those tutorials. So make sure you check that out. My YouTube channel is linked to my bio as well. I will upload this tutorial just a little bit later today, whenever my Wi-Fi will allow me to. And then I also have a link in my link tree called Tip Jar. So if you click on the link in my bio, scroll to the bottom, there's a little tab called Tip Jar. So if you'd like to leave me a tip or a gift for today's lesson, that is super, super appreciated. These are free, but I do enjoy tips. It helps me pay my rent. So please do check out the link in my bio, follow me, all that good stuff.